Perfect. Okay. And the whole thing is to promote industry. Now, did I mention Hamiltonian economics in this class?
Not yet.
Okay, good. And so, I'll save it. A couple periods I just started talking about in the middle when I didn't really want to. And then, what the heck? Well, the thing is this. Opposition was fierce. Jefferson and Madison were furious about this. As they looked at it, this is a classic example of, to them, why you should not help merchants. If you have to buy their patriotism, that means they aren't really going to be loyal to the country in the first place. What a terrible way to be loyal to the country. Of course, it's kind of idealized. Loyalty is loyalty. But still, Jefferson was mad. The opposition was fierce. It was not going to pass through the House, it looked like. But Washington wanted it, the president. John Adams, the vice president, wanted it too. And he had a dinner in New York. It had to be one of the most remarkable in history, where he invited all the major players, Hamilton, Jefferson, and Madison, to have dinner. And they hashed it out. What did Jefferson and Madison want? What did they? Yeah, actually, in Virginia would have been idealized. Because the District of Columbia originally was part of both. D.C. Did we get to that then? We have not done this. District of Columbia. It says in the Constitution that they'll create a capital. Well, everyone just assumed it would be probably New York, Philadelphia, or Boston, the three biggest cities. Jefferson wanted it in his home state, but the big thing is he wanted rural and south. That's what he wanted, the capital. And George Washington wanted it on the Potomac. He was obsessed with the Potomac River. He thought that could be a highway into the interior of the country. Too many rapids. It couldn't have been, but he thought it could. So Hamilton said, sure, here, you get your capital. You get your capital. We'll create a territory out of Maryland and Virginia. Right there. Nose town there, completely rural. Now it's only on the Maryland side of the Potomac is D.C., but then it was on both at first. So they had to make a city from scratch, literally. Lay it out, all would be done. It's relatively organized, kind of a combination of a French city and an American city, or a grid, traditional U.S. city after this time. And it's not going to be persuaded, or it's not going to be near the merchants, the bankers, finance. It's rural. And D.C. will maintain that southern rural feel, but it still kind of has that feeling. You know, it's a really big town, but it's not like New York City or Philadelphia. It feels more like a southern town. It's kind of a combination. In fact, there were still cows grazing in front of the White House when FDR became president. It was a southern rural city until the New Deal in World War II. I know, wouldn't it be cool if they still were going around the ellipse, but... And so, that's the deal. They got D.C., opposition dropped the assumption bill, it passed. By the way, that's called log rolling. Log rolling, yeah.
So how did this solve their issue?
It didn't solve the issue. Hamilton got what he wanted, Jefferson and Madison got what they wanted, so they both kind of, yeah. So it's not really a compromise as you think about it. It's called log rolling, and they basically, all right, we'll pass your bill, you pass my bill, keep the log moving. Keep the wheels rolling. And so it passed. It did not happen the way Hamilton thought or Jefferson thought. It didn't immediately destroy small farmers. It didn't immediately lead the industry. It more than anything showed their vision. It also in a lot of ways showed the future, but that's way down the road. Governments do have great impact, but not a small excise tax like this will change the world. But in 1794, 2 years after the bill is passed, there will be a whiskey rebellion. Sometimes it's called the Whiskey War. Too much alliteration for me. Taxpayers, small farmers in western Pennsylvania refused to pay the tax. Took up arms, called themselves the Whiskey Boys. And But this time, Washington is the president of a strong central government. Not like Shays' rebellion, where it was weak, now it's strong. By the way, if you answer one of those two essays about the Constitution, Shays' rebellion is really, really, really important. There's not the Shays' rebellion. But 13,000 militia, bigger than any army that Washington commanded during the Revolutionary War, marched to western Pennsylvania to put down the rebellion. He led them, got his Revolutionary War uniform on, and led them on horseback. Hamilton, the Secretary of Treasury, rode next to him. It'd be weird to imagine today President Obama leading the army to war on horseback, waving a sword, but it's a slightly different era, or any other president since basically Eisenhower was the last general. And so, with that, the rebellion, there was no fight. They just, okay, you win. You win, but now the government is strong. It can put down a rebellion. So, the Assumption Bill is a really big deal because it covers so much of what Hamilton's thinking was, the fight over the future of the country, and you see the divide. Those around Jefferson and Madison begin to say, we got to stop Hamilton. And they're going to become the Republicans. And those around Hamilton are going to become the Federalists. We'll talk a little bit more about the parties, but they're starting to develop right there over that key issue. What direction will the country go? What's the second one? This one is a lot shorter. It's the National Bank. It's also called the bus. I know what you're thinking. Did they have buses back then? Shockingly, yeah. No. Bank of the U.S. Bus. And the argument was for a central bank that could distribute money. Nowhere in the Constitution does it say this, but this is one of those implied powers, aka that necessary and proper clause. Congress can print money, can tax, can borrow, but it needs a place to distribute it or collect the taxes and store them. Hamilton said the bank is implied to do those duties. How do you distribute money if you don't have a bank to do it? That was his argument. So this is implied. It doesn't say it. But this fits in very well with this economic idea. Very well. Remember the whole thing about the Assumption Bill was get money to the hands of merchants so they will build industry. Give them power. More wealth. Same thing. What this would do is this. They would create, or they would give $10 million of taxpayer money. Why I'm swearing that, I don't know. What is that? That's not related. I don't know what shape that is. I'm creative. I can just make things up. No formal training. $10 million was a significant amount of money then. They would give this to a private entity of investors, the precursor to a corporation. It will be private. 10 million taxpayer money. You know, $10 million today for the federal government is like, it's not even an accounting error, it's so small. But back then, that was a lot of money. We have a $4 trillion budget today, so 10 million is nothing. That's like walking around money for us in here, right? Just, who has $10 million on? Nobody? 5? 1? And what they have is, it is private, but they would have to sign a contract called a charter. And in this charter, we'll lay out what this bank can and can't do. And so it's going to be private, but it's quasi-private because it gets government funding and as this charter lays it out. And what it's going to do is this. This will be a place to put tax receipts. Tax receipts. Money collected from, let's say, that whiskey tax will go into the National Bank. Then the National Bank can cut a check and give money to the federal government to pay or loan it out. Using the tax receipts as foundation, it can print currency then. So there would be a United States currency printed by this private entity so they can control the money supply. This currency will be like little IOUs that say, we promise that we have the value of $1, let's say, in the bank because of these tax receipts. So they're little tiny pieces of debt that say we owe you this. It's based on the Bank of Britain, or Bank of England. That's what the Bank of England does. It still did. Next, it will also loan money. Now, mostly to that merchant class. Once again, those merchants again, mostly to them. But there's a reason for it. What Hamilton is thinking is, we loan money to certain merchants. They take that money and use it as seed money to make private banks. So not a national bank, private banks. But this is how it works. Then those private banks, to get this loan to start a bank, they have to agree to certain regulations from the Bank of the United States to keep them healthy. You try to avoid risky loans, that sort of thing. So, to make credit available for businesses to borrow money and start. It's all geared for that. We do this today. This exists different way, more regulations, but it's the Federal Reserve System. It's the Bank of the United States. They print the currency. They loan money to banks. Banks have to follow Federal Reserve regulations. If you look at your currency, look at a dollar bill, it says Federal Reserve Note. Same thing as the Bank of the United States. It basically is. It's a little bit more controlled by the government, but other than that, it's the same or similar thing. Jefferson and Madison were really terrified by this. The first reason Jefferson and Madison were terrified is that basic element of Jefferson and Madison are farmers. They're terrified of debt. And they're seeing this as banks make money by loaning money. And they will encourage loans, farmers are getting more debt, and they'll be crushed and become wage slaves. That's supposed to be debt. That's supposed to be a B. It's kind of a B, isn't it? I mean, just use your imagination. Just call it the flow. But not just that. What they said was, and this was more just of an argument of convenience, they said, you've gone beyond implied powers. Stick to enumerated powers. You're stretching the Constitution too far. It is not one of the enumerated powers. You've gone too far with a bank. The government can't create a bank that's beyond the scope of the Constitution, especially when Madison said, it's kind of my Constitution, I wrote it. I wasn't thinking you could make a bank. Which, of course, is not all that valid, but that's what he said. But the reason they said it is this. If you go beyond enumerated powers and get to implied powers, the central government gets stronger. If the central government is stronger, so let's say we have a strong central government. Two, Jefferson and Madison, this meant one thing. The stronger the central government is, the more help it will give to one group of people. They would say the merchant class. It will help only this. In fact, they argue that the more powerful government gets, the merchant class will literally buy government. Now, you notice I keep saying the merchant class. This is pre-capitalism. There are no banks in the United States yet. So we're still just talking merchants, those who buy and sell goods, but have a little bit extra money. Big government will only help them. So the only way to protect small farmers, weak central government. Now, as it turned out, there's element of truth to both. Farmers need a lot of help from government, as they'll find out. But then again, yeah, merchant class can buy it. Why do you think they give so much, business gives so much money to politicians today? And so, with that, it did pass. Why did it pass? Very simple reason. Washington supported it. The bus passed. But only a 20-year charter. That's kind of a compromise. 20 years. So, if it doesn't work in 20 years, we can get rid of it. They would get rid of it, and Trump's be a disaster. And the third reason, very quickly, Hamilton wanted a protective tariff. By the way, he's now won 2 big victories. A protective tariff is a tax on imports that will dramatically raise the prices of British goods. The British manufactured good at that time was textiles. What Hamilton wanted was, you increase that tax. You increase the tax, textiles get so expensive. Excuse me. But people still want textiles. But they're really expensive to get from Britain. That will encourage what to happen in the US? What's that? Yeah, this will promote industry. It'll promote the industry. Also, then, this fledgling industry will get protected because British textiles will be so high. It gets rid of the foreign competition. And with that, American industry could grow. But this time he didn't win. He didn't win. Jefferson and Madison were able to convince the majority of the population, including Washington, that this will raise all prices. And farmers aren't going to start a textile mill. This will simply be a way to suck money, literally suck money from the rural class, from rural small farmers and the poor, and give it to merchants. Because the profits will all go to them. It didn't pass. A small, what we call a revenue tariff would pass, basically just a tiny, very small tax just to raise money for government, but not the big tax that was enough to keep on industry. This argument's going to go on to this very day. How do you promote trading competition while protecting American industry? And what we have ultimately is this. We call this Hamiltonian economics, where the Jeffersonian ideal would be for farmers, Hamiltonian economics, government, do everything it can to support the merchant class, soon to be called the capitalist, because they will build industry. Tax breaks, all that kind of thing. And I should add this. Hamiltonian economics is the basis of conservative economics today. Straight line. Different point of view. I mean, remember, Hamiltonian economics was pre-capitalism, but that's conservative economics. Today, conservative economics, those who believe in it, their roots are Hamilton. I should ask. We have 2 people running for president. Economically, they're both relatively conservative. But which one economically is more conservative, meaning wants to help wealthy people? The idea is if they had more wealth, they would create prosperity for everybody. But the 2 people running for president. Yeah, Trump. Clinton is fairly conservative, but Trump wants massive tax breaks and other benefits for the top, the very top. With the idea being they'll build factories, etc. He wants to give himself a tax. Well, no, he has to pay taxes. But others, he doesn't. I bet he doesn't pay anything. But a tax cut as much as 40%. All right, so we're going to watch Hamilton and Jefferson. And there's a couple things about this. First off, it has terrifying special effects. And some of you, I know, will get scared. And I do have a cry room set up. So you can go there and just try to recover. You regain your composure. And I'm not responsible for any nightmares you have. Next. You have to jot down some notes as you watch this. If you look up on the board and it says right next to the calendar, you have to get down. They're going to explain their views on why the Civil War happened, the Great Depression happened, their view on the role of government in the Constitution, industry versus agriculture, and the nature of man. You're not going to write about the causes of the Great Depression. You're just going to write about, when they look at the causes and they give their attitude to why it happened, they'll give you your point of view. It does a great job of explaining it. I enjoy this. It is terrifying with incredible special effects. See, lights, play. That's pretty cool. But watch this. Lights. I'm not kidding.
For those of you who are surprised or confused by this beginning, let me assure you that this is an educational motion picture. Bar Educational Films presents Man and the State, Hamilton and Jefferson on Democracy. That's the title of the film. Allow me to repeat it so you won't forget. Man and the State, Hamilton and Jefferson on Democracy. Oh yes, we must have a copyright. Thank you.
1975.
What a treat we have in store for you today. For this film, we are bringing back to life two of the founding fathers of this great country of ours. On my right, the man who was instrumental in the ratification of the Constitution, the first Secretary of the Treasury, the friend and advisor to George Washington, Alexander Hamilton. And on my left, the author of the Declaration of Independence, the first Secretary of State, the third President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson. You know who you are?
I am.
You are? Tell us who you are.
I am Alexander Hamilton.
Very good. Very good indeed. And what is the last thing you remember?
I can't.
You must try, Hamilton.
A hill.
A hill?
A hill. Pistols. A duel. I fought a duel with Burr. Aaron Burr.
Tell us exactly what happened.
We choose our weapons. Positions have been marked for us. We stand with our backs to each other. At the count of 3, we are to turn to fire.
1, 2, 3.
Burr turns, Hamilton, and Burr turns again.
All I remember was the flash of the muzzle of Burr's pistol. At the same moment, a great blow struck me. I fell.
The bullet entered the right side, fractured a rib, passed through the diaphragm and liver, and finally lodged in the lumbar vertebrae. Thus died Alexander Hamilton.
That was quick.
And Thomas Jefferson? What is your last recollection?
Nothing so dramatic. I lived a long time. Perhaps too long.
It's kind of close to the truth, what happened.
My last memory is of my bedroom in Monticello. This is the 4th.
What did he say?
I think he asked if it was the 4th. Why don't you tell him that it is?
I will not lie to you. No, dear heart. It's filled with bird.
I wanted to know if it was the 4th of July. Sentiment, perhaps. But at the end, it was very important to me. What day is it?
It is the 4th. The 4th of July.